Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on future-proofing your newsrooms. I have with me John Haake, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing at Leverage Labs. And together we will be talking a lot in detail about customer data platforms, in short called CDPs, and how you can use first-party data to improve audience profiling and engagement on your site, engagement as well as understanding your audience better to look at better revenue models, right? Just a brief introduction, I run Quintype and we work with publishers across the world to provide the technology platform for their needs, which includes the CMS, comment management systems, subscription management systems, a page builder, mobile apps, the entire stack that a publisher would require. And John, if you can introduce yourself and Leverage Labs, and we can get started from there.
You bet. Hi, everyone. My name is John Haake. As Chirdeep mentioned, I am VP of Sales and Marketing for a company called Leverage Lab. We're a first-party data consultancy with a foundation in technology, and that technology is the CDP. So we work with publishers, large and small, B2B and B2C, as well as advertisers and retailers to get the most value out of their first-party data. Just do a little sharing here. These are some of the companies that we work for. We were founded by Anne-Marie Wills and Matt Bramble. They come from the publishing world, a B2B company where they work together that was Source Data. Later, I think it was acquired by Penton. And Anne-Marie was an early adopter of the CDP technology way back, 6 or 7 years ago, before it was really the kind of the talk of the town that it is today. And she quickly kind of understood where there were immediate gaps. Though this was a marketer's tool and allowed her to be able to leverage her first-party data in ways that she hadn't been able to do before, but certainly liked to think that she could. She realized that this is sophisticated technology, and very few marketing departments actually have the kind of resources to be able to squeeze the most value out of an investment in the technology and in the first-party data. So she and Matt went out on their own and basically built Leverage Lab to span that chasm between the investment in the technology and actually getting real ROI out of it. So fast forward 5 or 6 years to today, and Leverage Lab is working with all these great companies that you see here. We've developed a playbook that allows publishers to actually get value out of a CDP investment as quickly as possible. And we have a lot of focus on revenue producing products. But that's not the only thing a CDP does. You can create new first-party data-driven revenue for sure, but you can also leverage that first-party data to do things that you're already doing much better, more efficiently, and a bigger scale. So the impact of a CDP investment is actually pretty big, and we built a company to ensure that those that invest in it actually get the most value out of it.
Great, thanks, John. So dive right into it, right? And you mentioned customer data platforms, and I do see a lot of your publishing clients using that, but a lot of them that we work with are still worried about which one to start looking at, a CDP or a DMP that most of them are used to already using. So getting to the details, what is a CDP and how is it different from a DMP?
So there's a tremendous amount of overlap kind of at the highest level between a CDP and a DMP. DMP has been around for about 15 years now. And as you mentioned, there's wide adoption for them on the publishing side. And what a DMP allows publishers to do is be able to collect and start to segment high value audiences. And they do that by transacting on cookies. And so you can think of one of the biggest differences between a DMP and a CDP is a DMP is using cookies, both first party and third party cookie, but the audiences aren't known. They could be first party audiences for sure. A lot of DMPs are talking about their ability to be able to collect and segment on first party data, but DMPs don't have known user profiles. And that's what a CDP does. It's like a DMP, it is a data platform. A CDP will drop a first party cookie on any visitors that come to your site. That first party, or excuse me, that user profile initially is an unknown profile, but you can start to collect all sorts of valuable behavioral data, and it goes into that user profile. And with a user journey that has marketing hooks, hopefully you can convince that user to share more information about themselves to the point where you actually collect some PII, some personally identifiable information. And that's usually through, a registration page, a web form. There's any number of ways you can be able to collect that data ethically, right? And once that happens, that anonymous profile that the CDP has been collecting all the behavioral data on attaches the PII to it. So that profile becomes known. And then there's a next step, being able to identify that known user in different channels. So imagine being able to address that user in in the open web and SMS and on their mobile device. And suddenly you're able to collect a mobile ID, and you're collecting a telephone number, a mobile telephone number. And then that user, that known user, becomes a connected user. And once you have a connected user profile, you're off to the races. There's any number of marketing and advertising executions that you can use against that user. So just like a DMP, a CDP allows you to segment audiences, but these segmented audiences are both unknown when you have an anonymous profile and known when you've got PII. And as we're kind of moving forward towards a cookieless future, having a known profile or a connected profile is going to be allow you to do all the wondrous things that you've been able to do the last 10 or 15 years, and do other things like be able to contact that user in the mobile channel with SMS and the like. So the CDP I characterize as kind of the next generation that is building on the foundation of a DMP. Now also the DMPs, they have a focus on paid media. So think digital display advertising and native advertising and the like. And a CDP, you can begin to execute against those high value audiences that you segment across more channels than you would with a DMP. So we're working with a lot of publishers that are looking to solve for getting rid of their DMP and using CDP functionality to kind of fill the gap or fill the vacuum. So I think more and more publishers are going to start doing that for sure.
Great, that's pretty interesting. I'm just curious about. We've seen DMPs being used by publishers for, as you mentioned, ad targeting. What's the typical pattern of using CDPs within publishers? What have your clients used CDPs for?
So it is, it's not just an advertising or a marketing tool. It allows you, like I said, to do all the things you're already doing as a publisher more efficiently and a greater scale. So let me start on some non-marketing or non-advertising use cases. So in the realm of audience development. You're able to get a deeper relationship with that user by taking information that you've already gleaned from them, their behaviors, the kinds of content that they're consuming, the amount of time they spend with that content. A lot of CDPs will have machine learning algorithms that will, have scoring like propensity and momentum. So you can build audiences based on that first party data that you've collected around their behaviors. So you can do things like, do personalization, have an actual journey that is most relevant to your users. You can recommend content. Something that we're seeing a lot in the last year is executions that support subscription strategies. So imagine just knowing if a visitor is already a subscriber or not is a valuable piece of information, because if you have a subscriber come in, you can shoot them over to your single sign-on or send them down another kind of lucrative journey. And if they're not a subscriber, you can send them down a path with the idea that they're going to convert into becoming a subscriber themselves. So just knowing that simple little fact, whether they're a current subscriber or not, allows you to do pretty sophisticated strategies around that to boost your goals. So that's kind of where the CDP really shines, is being able to customize and personalize that experience for the user. And when you do this, and we've known this for a very long time, when you serve them a relevant experience, they're going to stick around longer. There's going to be more page views. They're going to consume more content. And as they do, you're able to collect more behavioral data around them to start to understand who they are. And it's that behavior, it provides publishers the clear signal on what motivates that user. It's like, not only it's like, topic or content affinities, but, kind of in-market targeting, where you can start to understand, it's like, this person is researching this kind of purchase, and we can determine that based on their behaviors and the content that they are consuming. So you can be able to get a really deep understanding about who that audience member is, because you're not just relying on a cookie. The CDP is collecting all this other data and then being able to synthesize that data in ways that make it actionable for marketers. So it is a great way to be able to build and scale your audiences. And, it's a numbers game, right? So being able to do that is critical for publishers these days. And then you are able to segment these users into high value audience segments that you can begin to monetize against, right? So you can take that first party data audience segmentation and drive marketing services programs and advertising products. And at Leverage Lab, we spent the last 5 or 6 years kind of developing a playbook around this. So there's this notion about being able to decouple audience from inventory. So as a publisher, you are limited by the number of impressions that you actually can deliver via your owned and operated inventory. And, typically that has been kind of the ceiling when it comes to being able to monetize against that. But this idea about being able to decouple audience from inventory allows a publisher to create a high value audience based on behaviors and their owned and operated inventory, and then take that audience and make it available for an advertiser offsite in other addressable channels. And once you do that, you can run a lot of different strategies. For instance, at the top of the marketing funnel is awareness, right? So say you've created a custom audience for a particular advertiser, whether they came to you with their audience and you found them on your site, or you created it from scratch from your own traffic. But you have identified that this is a very specific audience for this advertiser. But you only have so many impressions that you can offer that advertiser. So the equation is number of impressions on CPM, and that's your limit, right? But if you take that audience and you go out and find other impressions in the addressable web, other paid impressions, you can start to run an arbitrage kind of strategy where I'm going to buy an impression for X amount of CPM, and I'm going to sell that impression to my advertiser for X+1, X+2, X+3, pick your number, right? So this is suddenly a new revenue opportunity. This is an audience extension play using first party data. So you can go out and find that audience and really amp up the awareness beyond your limitations on your owned and operated. Well, you can take that kind of philosophy and turn it on its head and do content amplification, which is basically going out and finding that audience and driving them back into your owned and operated for your advertiser. Now you can run audience development supporting campaigns this way, where you go out and find a high value audience and you bring them into your environment so you can start to recognize these users and move them from unknown to known to connected. And you can do the very same thing for advertisers and drive that high value audience at a scale that you couldn't deliver in your owned and operated back into your owned and operated world on behalf of that advertiser. You can point them to, say they're running a sponsored content programmed on your owned and operated. This is a really great way to get, relevant eyeballs into that sponsored content, way bigger scale than what you would be able to do in your owned and operated. So there's any number of ways to be able to leverage this first party data, these high value audiences, to drive revenue beyond what you're able to do today. So let me kind of drill in deeper on these market forces that are actually creating this new opportunity for publishers. I've got a lot of passion here, so forgive me if I start to shout and wave my hands. But this slide kind of culminates a lot of these market forces. None of this is new. We've all heard it for several years now. So with GDPR and CCPA in California, we're starting to see what legislation is going to look like for everybody across the globe. This is the direction it's going in. And to characterize it as simply as I possibly can, it is basically changing from having your audience opt out of being tracked to actually giving them the ability to opt in, to give them the power to decide whether or not a publisher or a website or advertiser, for that means, has the right to be able to track them. So this is kind of the basis of all the new privacy laws that you're starting to see across the globe. This is a good thing. We should look at consumers and traffic to our sites as our North Star and facilitate what they're trying to accomplish when they come to our properties, and then look for ways to be able to monetize on that responsibly. All the while, in the last 15 years or so, Facebook and then Google and then LinkedIn and now even Amazon are beginning to eat up all the media budgets out there, to the point where publishers on the open web, which I imagine most of our audience today you're fighting over the crumbs, right? So depending on who you're talking to, the walled gardens are eating up, anywhere from 80 to 90% of every dollar spent towards paid media. So the pie, though it's getting bigger, our slice of the pie is actually getting smaller. And if you're a B2B publisher, it gets even more difficult, because if you're doing something like I suggested about decoupling your audience from your inventory, your audience data, you see those users through a B2B lens as opposed to a B2C lens. And all the data onboarders prefer a B2C lens. So, think of Facebook. The information that you have provided Facebook is going to be your personal email and not your employer's email, right? So Facebook will match on a personal email a lot more readily than they'll be able to match on a professional email. So B2B publishers see a match rate much lower than on the consumer side, where if you have a good list and you go to Facebook and you try to create a custom audience using your list, you can expect 65, 70, maybe 80% match rate if it is a B2C. B2B publishers, they'll have something more like 30 or 40% match rate. So their scale begins to really diminish in comparison. So being able to understand who your audience is, and not just through a B2B lens, will allow B2B publishers to be able to address their audiences much better. And a CDP facilitates that. And then, everyone's talked about it. The third-party cookie is eventually going to disappear. I know Google pumped the brakes earlier this year, but it's going to happen. And they are the last major browser that actually supports third-party cookies. Mozilla or Apple with Safari, they got rid of this years ago. And the only reason why third-party cookies actually are still relevant anymore is the market share that Chrome has. So Chrome still has the majority of the web traffic. So third-party cookies are still viable at this point, but they're going away. And this is a good thing for everyone involved. They were a crutch, and we shouldn't have depended on them to begin with. And these changes are going to encourage everyone in the ecosystem to actually facilitate a first-party relationship with your consumers, your customers, and your audiences. And I think ultimately this is going to shake out to be a very good thing for publishers, because publishers own the relationship, right? And advertisers come to publishers to be able to leverage that relationship. So the more a publisher knows about a individual user, the more valuable that user profile is. And you do that by having a legitimate relationship with your audience, and and not just drop an anonymous cookie on the browser, but actually interact with them and find out what is important and what motivates them. And ultimately that serves the user very well, because they're getting personalized relevant content where they might not otherwise. And then the publisher benefits, because those audiences are even more valuable than what they've been marketing through third-party cookies and DMPs and the like. So this is all good news. I'm very bullish about the future. I wish this would have happened a long time ago. And it actually puts publishers back in the driver's seat where they belong. Because unfortunately, it's like, since the advent of programmatic media buying, publishers have basically had their lunch money taken away from them. And now this is a good reset on the entire infrastructure, and it puts the publisher in a really good position, because again, they own that first party relationship with the audiences.
Thanks, John. That's very insightful. Sorry, I had a small glitch with my network, so I had to log off and come back in. So
welcome back.
You mentioned a lot about third-party cookies, and I think the entire world is preparing for that at this point, which is, in a couple of years, third-party cookies are pretty much going to be phased out. And what, according to you, is the future of this? Will publishers need to use DMPs and CDPs together? Will there be a transition away from DMPs to CDPs? And should they start thinking of transitioning to CDPs at this point?
Yeah, it's past time. Publishers need to start to invest in this newer technology. Again, a DMP largely transacts on a cookie pool, and you have an audience that you create in your DMP. That audience is reflected in a cookie pool that gets matched with another addressable platform. Well, that cookie pool is going to be diminished when third-party cookies stop getting supported in Chrome. So you have to be able to make that audience addressable somehow. So there's any number of solutions that are coming down the pike. The trade desk is kind of leading the way with UID, and they have a whole coalition of ecosystem partners that have bought into it. And being able to use that solution fully requires everybody to come to the table with an addressable audience, right? So, so having a first-party relationship with that audience, having PII on these audience members, and being able to demonstrate, you've got a relationship with that audience will allow you to be able to take advantage of these new audience targeting solutions that are coming down the pike. Now, Google is, they've been kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth for sure, especially around when and if they are going to decommission the third-party cookie support. It's going to happen. And about 6 months ago, one of their product managers on the Google blog mentioned that they aren't inclined to support the kinds of solutions that Trade Desk is suggesting. But they did say they are going to continue to facilitate those parties that can demonstrate that they have a first-party relationship with their audience. And what that means, what I'm predicting, is we're going to have a similar situation like we've been doing with Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where you come to the table with your first-party audience with PII, and then you'll match it with a Google user graph. And then the resulting overlap between those two will be that addressable audience. Now, you're not going to be able to look into that audience and know exactly who the users are, but you're going to have, pretty good confidence that your audience is being reflected in this overlap audience. This is the agreement that we've had as marketers with the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and the Twitters. It seems to work, and I think ultimately Google was going to have a similar version of that. But again, I just want to highlight, it will require that you have that relationship with your audience. So you can't just come to them with a cookie pool full of third-party cookies from your DMP and be able to match on that. Those days are going to quickly disappear. So yes, this is something that we need to invest in right away. And like I said, it serves all of our needs, right? It allows publishers to actually have rich audiences to be able to offer to their advertisers. It makes it better for the consumer and the user because it's more privacy compliant, and they have more of a trust in a relationship with they demonstrated a trust in a relationship with a publisher by giving them PII. So this is going to drive all our goals, and it's certainly a win-win-win situation, I predict. And now's the time to get that process started.
Perfect. So with a lot of these publishers, we see that audience have multiple touch points with publishers. So there is, of course, the web, mobile apps, newsletter subscriptions, comments and reactions on publisher sites, social media, push notifications. There's way too many touch points, right? With CDPs, what you're telling us is you'd create a 360 profile of this user, and you would know exactly what they're subscribing to and how you can probably engage them better on their site. What does it take for a publisher to integrate a CDP into their workflows, into the CMS or into a DXP that they're using currently?
So it's actually fairly easy. So Most CDPs, once you buy a software license, I, I don't know any that don't run off a SaaS model. Most of them require either the CDP itself, or maybe they have a partner like Leverage Lab to do an integration of the technology. This makes it very easy to make sure as a marketer, make sure that everything is in place. And when we do an integration, it is driven by use cases. So before we do anything, we work with the publisher to understand exactly what they're intending to use their first party data to drive. Because a lot of decisions that are made in the implementation process have major ramifications later down the road. So being able to address these use cases early means you're going to set up the CDP environment to drive those use cases as efficiently as possible. And like I said, CDPs are a marketer's tool. Their interfaces and their complexity and their audience building tools kind of vary from vendor to vendor, but most of them are friendly enough for marketers to be able to use. And if they aren't right out of the blocks, they can partner with someone like Leverage Lab to get them up to speed so they can understand what the processes are, the types of skill sets that are required. And there's also a lot of like change management that comes into play with a CDP, because usually a CDP it gets paid for across multiple department budgets. So there's a lot of owners in there, IT and tech and digital and marketing and sales. Everyone's got kind of their finger in the first party data stew. So it requires the organization to actually align to the new technology. And there's generally some growing pains, but ultimately it's like once everything is up and running, what we see with publishers is we've got an implementation that is anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. And then during that time, you can start to collect a critical mass of audience data. So once the implementation's done, you actually have something to start to go out and create these high value segments on. And so what we do at Leverage Lab in a parallel path, we train up the sales team to be able to go out and be able to sell these first party data driven revenue products, provide them the case studies and the sales sheet, and then just kind of the sales training to be able to have those new conversations with advertisers. So what we like to see when everything is working together and we're firing on all pistons is by that 6th month, you're starting to see real revenue from your investment in the CDP. And like I said, it's not just revenue. CDP is good for all the other things that you already do as a publisher, especially around audience development. So almost immediately you can start to personalize experiences with content recommendations and being able to segment your audiences out in dynamics real-time segments, so you can send them down different journeys and such. So hopefully by the 6th month you start to see all these things start to ping together, and certainly by the end of a 12-month engagement, our publisher clients generally see like a 6x return on the CDP investment. So that includes the license fee and also kind of any managed services that Leverage Labs has. So it's a money-making engine, to be kind of crass about it. And as just a little proof point or some evidence there, with our publisher clients, Leverage Labs, we see this tremendous retention. So we're 90-95% in terms of retaining customers year in, year out. That's because we create with the CDP and leveraging their first party data, we create this revenue engine that no one wants to, look for the plug to pull out of the wall. They're all looking for the accelerator pedal. So this is a great thing for publishers, a great opportunity, and kind of now's the time.
Perfect. 6x return. I think I would jump and right into it.
Yeah. It really makes financial sense. And that's not even taking advantage of kind of all the other functionality that the CDP is going to, help you be able to provide your audience and, audience experiences.
Right. So a question that we normally get from publishers is that they see news consumption on social media, and every publisher today publishes their news on social media, right? The engagement on social media seems to be far outweighed from the engagement on their own site. Is this something that CDPs can help with? Can they bring back engagement, much significantly better engagement on the publisher sites itself?
They're going to have to for the kind of the survival of Western style democracies. So this is a passion point for me. So I'm talking to you here in United States. You're in India. These democracies depend on a free exchange of ideas, and the free press has been the engine for that for hundreds of years. And what that looks like today are news sites and information sites and entertainment sites on the open web. And that is where the free exchange of ideas actually happen and makes for a healthy democracy. We've seen what happens with social media. It can be weaponized with disinformation. So I think this is critical. I don't think it's something that publishers need to do to make themselves viable. I think it's something they need to do to make our entire livelihoods and way of life viable. So I think they play a critical role in a healthy community. So it's imperative that we figure this out. So the good news is things have gotten so bad the last 5 or 6 years that I believe the general public is a little less enamored with social media and is actually looking for alternatives. And I think the perfect alternative is something that they've trusted forever, which is, the free press, and, open web delivers that in spades. So the keys are obviously what you have brought up. It's like, you need to be able to engage users and visitors to your site as well as they are engaged in social media. So you have to give them the kinds of experiences to deliver that value exchange. And the better you're able to do that through leveraging the first party data, the more likely you can encourage this kind of transition back to sites outside of the walled gardens. So I'm bullish about this. I think a lot of market forces are kind of pointed in the right direction, and now it is the responsibility of publishers of the open web to get it right this time. Right, deliver the value to your audiences. Forge those first-party relationships with your audiences. Endear yourself to your users, because they are looking for a way to get all the information and all the entertainment that they've gotten through their social media feeds somewhere else. So I do think it's like there are built-in opportunities, right, around article comments and things like that. I think that is where people are going to interact, and they're going to have all the same kind of behaviors that they demonstrate in social media. It's going to be at the bottom of an article page going forward. So I think there are a lot of really great solutions out there. Open web is one that's really trying to clean up the discourse and get rid of the toxic back and forth that we see on Facebook and the like, and actually get down to a real exchange of ideas. And so I think the opportunity is really big, and the ramifications are huge.
Interesting. So I think that's every publisher's goal right now, which is pretty much get the traffic back onto their sites rather than lose them on social media. Having said that, we work with a lot of publishers across the world, and we're seeing one pattern emerge. Amongst a lot of them, we see one pretty much significant pattern emerge across the world, which is the move towards reader revenue. I think a lot of publishers are moving not necessarily away from ad revenue, but they would want to have an alternate source of revenue, right? Ads can only do so much. You can show only so many ads on a 6-inch screen. So you want to engage your audience better and get them to pay for content as well. So how would CDPs help accelerate this shift? How can, I do understand that you know first-party data really well. How can you leverage that to convert some of your free users to come and pay on your site and get reader revenue going on your site?
Well, I'll go back to that simple example that I gave early on. Just knowing whether a visitor is already a subscriber or not is very valuable information, right? So as somebody comes to the site for the first time, and you realize they are a first-time visitor, or they're a return visitor that hasn't chosen to subscribe, you can start to deliver an experience specifically for them to encourage them along a user journey that converts into a subscription. So being able to segment your audience between yes, they're subscribers and no, they're subscribers is so simple, but most publishers can't even do that, right? So they provide kind of a, one experience for all kind of strategy, and those are only going to be so successful. So to be able to have multiple strategies designed for specific types of users and opportunities will allow you to customize that experience and hopefully kind of grease the rails to converting. So that's one way. And along the way, it's like, having a CDP and being able to understand who these people are and what motivates them means you can start to give those kinds of experiences to them that will lead to better conversion rates. It's all about making the user experience as relevant and as valuable as you possibly can. And you can't do that if you don't know anything about the user. So these are simple concepts that publishers can't activate on without being able to leverage that first party data and create known users. So it makes just about everything more efficient and provides scale beyond what they already have. And speaking of scale, imagine if I'm a publisher and I create a high value audience of current subscribers. Right? These are my subscribers, and these are the characteristics that this group shares. I can take that information and go out and have really highly informed lookalike audience targeting in very cheap open web display inventory to drive that relevant traffic back into your site. So you can increase the scale of your site traffic and only target those users that share the kind of characteristics that your current subscribers have. So you can scale and focus at the same time. I don't know how you'd be able to execute on a strategy like that without a CDP. But I think this is where publishers are really going to be able to leverage the technology and the data, actually drive a very specific and meaningful strategy around subscriptions. And there's all sorts of other kind of half steps with content gating and metering and the like. All this is facilitated by the more data that you have.
Perfect. So I think this answers a lot of questions for a lot of that a lot of publishers have been asking us about. We need to know a lot more about audience and bring them down the funnel of show them the content, get them to engage better, and then finally get to the point of paying for content as well. So moving ahead, are there different types of CDPs? If I'm a publisher and I'm looking at implementing a CDP in my publishing house, are there different types of CDPs that I need to be aware of? Is there a CDP particularly for media publishing versus one for e-commerce or marketing? And what should I be choosing for something that I'm looking at?
As a publisher? So yes. the answer is yes. There is a pretty robust market of solutions out there, and if your audience hasn't already, I encourage everyone to go to Gartner to see their CDP quadrant. It's really very enlightening. You can start to understand the 4 different types of CDPs, and I'll get them wrong, but I'll probably get 3 out of the 4 right. So you have, and I won't use actual names of solutions because I don't want to show any preference even to our partners. I want this to be as straightforward as possible. So there are CDPs that actually concentrate on the data pipes, moving data around. And these are kind of some of the oldest CDPs out there, because this was one of the very first use cases, being able to bring all your data into a single environment, so you can start to get your arms around what you have, right? So bring in data from your ESP and your events platform, and marry online web data with offline data to kind of get your arms around or create kind of a universe of your first party data. And then there are CDPs that do a really good job about tagging, being able to kind of organize all the various assets and opportunities that an audience will interact with. And those CDPs do a better than average job in being able to collect data around that kind of activity. And then there are CDPs that kind of concentrate on being able to activate on this audience data. So it's all about segmentation, and then being able to take that audience segment and then apply it to addressable channels. So they have a lot of integrations with execution channels, like with Google and the Trade Desk, and what have you, whatever addressable channel might be relevant to an advertiser's strategy. So those are the three that I can remember. There's a 4th one that I can't really remember right now, more on kind of on ETL data conversion and stuff like that. I believe it is. And in each one of these quadrants, Gartner quadrants, you'll also have kind of specific functionality that will speak to either a vertical or a group of use cases. So you have CDPs that do a really good job about collecting user behaviors and taking that raw user behavior data, feed it into machine learning to be able to create high value audience segments kind of on the fly, create predictive audiences where, okay, this audience, it has a greater than average likelihood to do this, right? Say they're clickers, or they are more likely to sign up for content gating, which is like the first step to a digital subscription, maybe. So there are CDPs that kind of really focus in on being able to collect and leverage that valuable user data. And as a publisher, that's kind of where we push our clients, is to kind of understand all that behavior that consumers are displaying on your sites. That's information, that's data that doesn't exist anywhere else. That that behavioral data is specific to you. That is your gold that no one else has. This is your content, your experiences, your environments. No one can replicate that, not even on social media. So being able to leverage that as well as you can is, I think, the key for being viable later down the road. It helps you differentiate yourself by demonstrating it in the kind of addressable audiences that you can create. And it's proprietary data. No one else has that. So it is your secret sauce for sure. So for publishers, it's we say it's all about being able to collect these user behaviors, be able to do affinity scoring to understand what are the topics that really resonate with these users. A couple of the CDPs that we work with, they have things like natural language processing where they can consume content on your site in a way similar to how humans actually consume it. So you're not with like a CRM with the tags on that page, you can understand it's like, oh, they went to this URL and this URL is tagged with these, topic tags and things like that. And you kind of piece together, what motivates them. But some of these CDPs have really sophisticated functionality where you can start to make inferences on all that. So you get a more of a kind of a 360-degree view of what is motivating that user that goes beyond these are the pages that they hit, right? So it's we suggest to publishers to go to the CDPs that actually help you leverage all that behavioral data that only exists on your site. And then there's some CDPs that have better user interfaces. There's some CDPs that require actually having somebody with development skills, someone that can run SQL queries and things like that. And then there's some that are kind of more friendly that an average marketer like myself can use. So the opportunity is kind of wide and varied.
Great, John. Thanks so much for all of those insights. I think we're coming close to the end of the webinar. We have roughly about 5 minutes out here. I'll probably take some questions from our audience. There's already one, I think, from Vineet, which says, content personalization through CDPs would mean ability to craft more relevant subscription packs and hence better monetization. I guess that's an obvious offshoot, right? So you should be able to recommend a particular subscription pack. Let's say this audience would pay for, say, 36 months of subscription on your site because they're consuming a lot of content. So why would you show them only an annual subscription? You could convert them for 3 years. So these are options that a publisher could use with relevant data from a CDP coming through.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. It's like the example I provided you, just knowing whether they are a subscriber or not goes a long way, and most publishers can't even do that. But your example kind of takes it up to the next level. It's like, based on their behavior, it indicates that they're more likely than an average user to be able to pull the trigger on a longer subscription than somebody that is a kind of a marginal or sporadic visitor. So it's the more you know about your audience, the better you can tailor the offering.
Great. We have another question coming in from Dipendra. Would CDPs work for publishers with lower traffic, since meaningful profiling would need critical volume of data? Yeah, so volume is a kind of a critical lever for sure. It's my position that being able to leverage your behavioral data that occurs on your site is going to be critical for publishers to be viable going forward. So that even means smaller publishers. And Leverage Lab, we kind of specialize in working with, small to, I wouldn't say specialized, but we have a lot of small to mid-size B2B publishers, and their volume is much lower than their B2C brethren. And we have worked, our playbook
in a way that even makes these smaller publishers get that kind of 6x ROI out of their investment. But there is a point of diminishing returns for sure. But I would say that if you're at that scale anyway, then you're going to have viability issues no matter what, and that you need to actually grow your business year in to year out. And going forward, especially when the third-party cookie disappears, I'm not really sure how you're going to do it outside a CDP, because you're being able to create audiences and DMPs are largely going to disappear because the third-party cookie is disappearing too. So I think this is kind of a mandatory investment for any publisher going forward.
Great, thanks so much for those valuable insights. I think we are pretty much at the end of the webinar. We'll give a couple of minutes for folks to ask any other questions if they need to, but any last words for publishers out there on the CDPs? How soon should they be looking at? How soon can Leverage Lab help them get up to speed with the CDP?
Yep. So like I said, I encourage all publishers to start seriously investigating this technology if they have not. And if you're not, then you're whistling past the graveyard. So this is, I think this is, like I said, required research and required technology eventually for all publishers. And I predict that we're going to have, in the next few years, we're going to have the same kind of adoption rate that we saw around DMPs. And the good news is, though, I think, typically a CDP is slightly more expensive than a DMP. The ability to squeeze value out of your audiences increases greatly with a CDP. So, it's a revenue game here. So you're a publisher, you're trying to make money. And there are groups out there like Leverage Lab that have created ways to be able to, turn that investment in technology into actual revenue. And then once you're able to get all that kind of stuff in place, then it's a matter of scaling. It's like, how big can you get? How deep can your insights be around your audiences? And I think we're all going to be walking down this path sooner or later.
Thanks so much, John. I think it's been a pleasure speaking with you. As I'm hoping all of our audience has got some valuable insights that they can go ahead with and start looking at the path of applying CDPs on their publishing platforms as well. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.